review.
What's up and welcome to my review of the Asus Strix Scar 15. This laptop is the sexiest laptop I have ever seen, period, especially in a dark environment where the RGBs just really pop. The implementation of the RGB strip underneath the display, causing reflections off of the keys, a light up RGB rear logo, and then the backlight on the keys themselves are also insanely bright. This laptop is simply gorgeous and it packs so much performance in a 5-pound chassis. Let's take a look at the specs. Now this Scar 15 comes with a Ryzen 9 5900HX. When under a CPU only load, it will boost to 79.8 watts of power consistently. And when under a dual load with the CPU and GPU fully engaged, it boosts up to 60 watts of power. And when under a GPU only load, the RTX 3080 pulls 130 watts. And when under a dual load, we get 114.9 watts. Now the 165Hz QHD display clocks in at 327 nits peak brightness, over 100% sRGB, 93% Adobe RGB, and 90% P3 color gamut. Now my unit had minor backlight bleed in the bottom left and right corners, but it was not noticeable under day-to-day use. This display is noticeably brighter and more vibrant than your average gaming laptop display. But at 740:1 contrast ratio, it's just not as punchy as some. Now this is a fantastic overall display with probably the best overall package provided in a 15-inch chassis that you can buy today. The really fast response rate is great for esports, but not quite as good as say a 300+ Hz display. It's perfect for casual gaming because of the high color gamut, and it's awesome for content creators as well because of the high resolution and high color gamut combination. Now, it's not that great for outdoor use because it's not above 400 nits brightness. Now, this comes with 32 gigs of DDR4 3200 MHz memory with dual rank. And this dual rank does help aid performance a bit in titles like Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Now, this has a 1TB SSD, Wi-Fi 6, and Bluetooth 5.1, all of which worked exceptionally well out of the box. Now, Asus weighs this laptop at 5.07 pounds. Now, I did install an extra SSD in this machine, and when I weighed it, it weighed slightly more. Now the majority of this chassis is 0.89 inches thick, but it does get a little bit over 1 inch thick because of the rubber feet on the bottom. Arguably, the feature that takes the cake for me with this laptop is the music activated RGB mode, which turns the laptop into a synced light show to whatever music you're listening to. The left side represents the bass, the middle, the mids, and the right side, the highs. And it really helps me get into the flow when I'm working, typing. It was just awesome sitting on the couch with a dark environment and letting the light show play out while I worked on my review. The real difference maker is the better software Asus includes on this machine. It allows you to customize each individual light, and it actually works. Now, using the Aura Creator software included on the laptop, I was able to create custom RGB profiles that are accessible in Armory Crate. The main reason I wanted to do this is when I'm using the laptop at night to watch Netflix, the laptop is sitting on my chest here and the RGBs are like right there blinding you. So if you can set it so that the RGB on the keyboard is the only RGB activated, it's a much more comfortable viewing experience when watching Netflix. I was also able to achieve a pure white backlight just on the keyboard. So if you're going to take this into a business meeting, you have the option of just going white, and then it looks a lot more business casual. Now you can also set up scenario profiles which can be assigned to different applications. For example, you can have a business scenario profile where the keyboard backlight is set to white and all the other RGB lights are turned off. And then you could also set up a gaming profile where all of the RGB rainbow lights are turned on once you open a game. These profiles can also be used so that in the business setting you have it set to silent, and when you open a game, it automatically switches onto turbo mode. Setting up the scenario profiles takes a lot of time, but once they're set up, you don't have to worry or think about the RGB lighting setup anymore, and it's just done all automatically depending on what application you're using. Now the glass touchpad on this machine is simply awesome. The click is even and smooth. You glide across the overall large touchpad. Now the number pad mode is too sensitive, causing accidental touches at the lightest touch. And normally it's not that big a deal. You just move your mouse if you accidentally touch it. But when you have number pad mode engaged, you end up typing numbers or pressing the enter key, and that might, for example, send an instant message that's not fully ready to be sent. So what I want to see is Asus make the number pad less sensitive around the edges so accidental touches aren't as frequent. Now the optomechanical keyboard on this machine is great. I love the soft clickiness of it, and it's not too loud. Check it out. Just a little bit louder than your normal keyboard, but you get a nice shunk, nice feedback every time you press a key. It's a great balance between a mechanical keyboard and a chiclet laptop style keyboard. Overall, I really like the layout of this keyboard as well. Initially, I didn't like the fact that we had home and end page buttons on the arrow keys, but after using it, it's very easy to find the arrow keys because of this gap, so you can just find those arrow keys by feel rather than having to look down at the keyboard, which makes it so you can use home and end really quickly and easily. Now this laptop comes with something called the Keystone, which I'll proceed to take out from behind the tape. I taped it in because it fell out and I lost it for like 2 days. And it really sucked because we searched the house for like 3 hours, couldn't find it. And so I had to shoot a bunch of B-roll with the Keystone missing, which is pretty silly. The Keystone allows you to use the shadow drive, which is an encrypted drive on your machines. Now pairing your Keystone with your Asus account enables your shadow drive. This hidden encrypted drive will only be visible on your laptop when you insert the Keystone or enter the password. You can also trigger certain actions when inserting or removing the Keystone, like activating a fan profile upon inserting the Keystone, or locking your Windows account when the Keystone is removed. The main use for this, in my opinion, is locking away sensitive data like your social security number or medical records, so that if your laptop is stolen, the data remains encrypted without the Keystone or password. Now the ports in this machine are really solid. We've got a 3.5mm combo audio jack, an HDMI 2.0 connected to the AMD integrated GPU. We got 3 USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A's and 1 USB-C 3.2, and you'll probably want to use the USB-C port when hooking up to an external monitor if you want to maximize performance. Now I did test out the power delivery with my 100-watt USB-C power adapter here, and it worked great, allowing you to charge the laptop while watching Netflix or doing light office tasks. But keep in mind that if you decide to game on it, even with a capped frame rate, you're still going to slowly drain the battery down to nothing. Now I did try VR on this with my Quest 2, wirelessly streamed with virtual desktop, and played Half-Life Alyx as well as a number of other games, and it played flawlessly even on high settings. Now keep in mind, for VR you'll ideally want to use the USB-C port to output video to a wired VR headset. Now I simply can't include a full performance breakdown on this laptop without making this review like way too long, so I'll be making a separate, much longer video talking about all of the performance and benchmarks from this machine, so be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out on that. Now the Timespy score is the highest I've ever tested. Now just for fun, I flashed the VBIOS of the Scar 15 just to see what would happen, and we managed to score 12,632. Now I'm going to make a follow-up video talking about the flashed VBIOS performance coming up soon, so if you don't want to miss out on that, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Now for Timespy points per pound, this is the best performance per pound I've ever seen in a laptop. It's a huge step up, but it's also true of the CPU as well. The Scar 15 scored 13,100 in my Cinebench R23 run. For Cinebench R20, this got 5,239, again topping out my chart for laptop CPUs. And as you can see on our Cinebench R20 performance per pound, this is the best you can get, better even than the bang for buck cheaper models from last year. Now, when it comes to performance per dollar, this machine is not terrible, especially considering how many premium features this machine comes with, but it's also not great. It's quite clear that if you want better performance per dollar, you're going to want to get the RTX 3070 version of this machine, simply because it's not a massive gap in performance, but it is $500 cheaper. Now, I benchmarked this laptop so many times. I benchmarked 1080p bypassing Optimus to an external display, QHD bypassing an Optimus to an external display, and then I also tested on my 4K TV back there to see what kind of performance we can get at 4K. And the news is fantastic. fantastic. Now, when it comes to games, this machine pushes the boundaries of what you can expect in a 15-inch chassis that is this thin and light. We're talking about excellent gaming performance in every single title I tested. Now, you can downsample the res from QHD to 1080p on this display, and it looks perfectly crisp in a lot of titles, but some titles just don't handle that down resing very well and causes blurry artifacts. At 1080p, you can play with all maximum details fully maxed out, even with DLSS on quality. Now, on QHD, I saw excellent performance, and I tested with DLSS on balanced. And when I went up to 4K, I was able to play on all ultra settings, but I did set DLSS to ultra performance to ensure high enough frame rates. Overall, this machine blows my mind in terms of the amount of performance you're getting in such a thin and light package. I absolutely love it. And it's not just good gaming performance or good CPU performance, but it's an overall combination of everything put together. Now, I have seen this comment on a number of my videos, no mucks, no bucks, which admittedly is really funny, but on this laptop, I don't think that applies, and here's the reason why. We are utilizing a QHD 165Hz display. This means our target frame rate and resolution will make games much more GPU bound, and we're also not looking to push past 165 frames per second. So in my opinion, the mux switch just doesn't matter as much on a QHD laptop. Overall, the lack of a mux will only cost us about 3 to 7% of our overall performance in these GPU bound games. Now, we have 4 main fan profiles. Take a listen to my stress test. This is what it sounds like with maximum fans. This is turbo mode when it gets louder. This is turbo mode when it gets quieter. And this is the performance fan setting. This is what the silent fan profile sounds like. Now, in my dual load stress test with the Heaven benchmark and the Firestrike physics test, this laptop got warmer than the 17-inch Strix G17. The thermals were not quite as good, which is expected in a smaller overall chassis. That said, the thermals on this machine are insane for a 15-inch laptop. There are so many heat pipes in this little chassis for its size. It's incredibly impressive. Now, for the best blend of high performance and overall quietness, use the performance mode. It provides an excellent gaming and acoustic experience. Now, silent mode is really interesting because it basically mutes the laptop entirely, like the fans completely turn off unless it has a heavy load, and when it has a heavy load, the fans barely come on at all. So if you're like me and you need to have the laptop just be really quiet, say in a business meeting or on a call, silent mode is definitely the way to go. Now, generally speaking, in actual games, we saw much better temperatures than during my stress test.
Do you think the Sears ROG laptops are cooling very well? Yeah, they're cooling extremely well because the AMD CPU is not putting much heat into the rest of the heat pipes, which allows for the CPU and GPU basically to not produce that much heat, and we end up getting great temperatures overall. I mean, look what we're getting right now, 68 and 66. I mean, they're below 70 for both.
I almost never saw the temperatures go above 80, and typically they were well below 75 in the vast majority of titles. Despite this being a 15-inch laptop, we still have fantastic thermals. Fantastic thermals, huzzah! Okay, I don't know why I did that. That said, propping up the back of the laptop by even 1 inch increased the airflow enough to drop the temperatures by 3 degrees for the CPU and GPU in my stress test. So if possible, I recommend lifting the back of the laptop up just a little bit or putting a laptop stand, though I didn't do any of my thermal testing like that, it still had good overall temps. Now, while using the laptop for high performance gaming with max fans, the keyboard remained literally cool to the touch, which is great for a 15-inch chassis. Now, this comes with a 90 watt-hour battery. In airplane mode, I was able to get 8+ hours. Now, browsing the web or Wi-Fi video streaming, I was able to get 6+ hours. And while gaming on the go with frame rate capped at 30 FPS, I was able to get about an hour and a half. Now, the speakers on this machine are some of the best I've ever heard in a 15-inch chassis. We've got loud full bass, solid mids, and clear highs. That said, you can really feel the bass reverberate through the chassis of the laptop if it's on your lap. So there's a lot of great things about this machine, but why might you want to skip the Scar 15? Well, depending on the fan profile, temperatures can get a bit high, especially on the CPU in turbofan mode. Now I have one minor creak in my chassis right here. I do think the display could be brighter and have better contrast. Now, the lack of a webcam will be a deal breaker for some. Now, a nice free alternative is using your smartphone camera, which I will be making a video about how to do that in the near future. Now, this did come with a little bit of bloatware. McAfee, you'll just have to uninstall that. Sadly, this does not have a full-size SD card slot, which I would just love. And arguably the biggest downside is that until we have more AMD Ryzen 5000 series CPUs, it's going to be very hard to buy any of these Ryzen 9 5900HX machines. So overall, if you're looking for a premium 15-inch laptop, this is, I think, the one to buy at least right now. The very best of the best right here. You've got almost all of the premium features you could want in a laptop except maybe Windows Hello, and you get a really well-rounded, balanced performance on the CPU and GPU at the same time. Now, I went ahead and put 16 terabytes of SSD space in here, and I've got 64 gigs of RAM coming, which I'll also be putting in here, and this will be my laptop for the foreseeable future. So if you want to know what laptop I chose, it's this guy. So that's my review of the Scar 15. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you in the next one. Brandon out. Huzzah.